I thought it would be the happiest moment of my life, but instead of love, I saw coldness in his eyes. I said, "I'm pregnant," and he just disappeared. No explanation, no apology, like I never existed. I was left alone, with fear, and with a tiny heartbeat growing inside me. In my world, running away was never an option. I was raised with faith, and I knew this child was not a mistake. This was my test, and my miracle. When I told my parents, I expected judgment, but instead I got the kind of embrace that saved me. I didn't know how I would make it. I didn't know what would come next. But I knew one thing. I would have this baby, even if it meant going through pain, loneliness, and fear. And when I heard his cry for the first time, my world came back together. This is not just a story about pain. It's a story about strength, faith, and a love that begins with a single heartbeat.
Love Stories Max. Welcome to my channel. Enjoy watching, friends.
I said, "I'm pregnant," and he disappeared. I remember that day as if it never really ended. I was still a college student back then. Life felt so big, so open, full of possibilities. I believed everything would be okay if I just stayed true to myself and to God. And then I found out I was pregnant. My world didn't just shake, it shattered into 1,000 pieces. Travis, when I told him, his eyes turned cold, like he wasn't looking at me anymore, but right through me. He said he was too young, that a child wasn't part of his plans, that he had a career ahead of him. And then he just disappeared. No explanation, no goodbye, not even a sorry. I was left alone, with fear, with pain, and with a tiny heartbeat growing inside me. I remember one night I couldn't sleep. I sat on the floor, wrapping my arms around myself, quietly praying. I kept asking, why me? Why this? But somewhere deep inside, I already knew the answer. This child wasn't a mistake. He was my calling. I grew up in a faithful family. In our home, abortion was never even a conversation. It wasn't a matter of choice. It was a matter of the heart. And my heart already loved him, long before I ever saw his face. When I told my parents, I was trembling. I was afraid of disappointing them, afraid of seeing judgment in their eyes. But my mom, she just hugged me, tight, the kind of hug that puts you back together piece by piece. And my dad said just one thing: "We're together in this, and we'll get through it." And for the first time in a long while, I cried, not from fear, but from relief. The months were hard. I worked as a notary assistant, studied, pushed myself to exhaustion. Sometimes I felt like I wouldn't make it. But every time I placed my hand on my belly and felt a small kick, I smiled. He was with me, my little boy. And then that day came. The hospital smelled cold and sterile, but inside me everything was burning. The pain was intense, but I wasn't afraid. I knew what it was for. My mom held my hand. I could hear her voice, soft and steady. "Breathe, honey, you're strong." And I breathed, and I prayed. Time seemed to stop, and then I heard his cry, so loud, so alive, so mine. In that moment, all the pain disappeared, like it had never existed. They placed him on my chest, small, warm, so incredibly fragile. I looked at him through my tears. His fingers so tiny I was afraid to touch them, his cheeks soft like a cloud, and his eyes, he couldn't open them fully yet, but I already knew they would change my whole life. "Hi," I whispered. "I've been waiting for you." I held him closer and felt something impossible to put into words. It was love, pure, unconditional, without fear. We named him Michael, after my grandfather, a strong, kind man who always believed in family. I wanted my son to carry that strength within him. I looked at him and thought, "You're not a mistake. You're my miracle." Back then, I didn't yet know how hard it would be. The sleepless nights, the work, the exhaustion, the tears I would hide so he wouldn't see. But in that moment, in that hospital room, holding him in my arms, I knew only one thing. I wasn't alone anymore, and I would never regret this choice, because in my hands was an entire life, my son, my Michael. Mornings were always the same, and yet somehow different every time. I would wake up before sunrise quietly so I wouldn't wake Michael. I'd watch him for a few seconds, the way he slept, the little smile on his face. And in that moment I found the strength for the entire day. I was always in a rush. Always. The city lived its own life. Expensive restaurants, cozy cafes filled with the smell of fresh coffee, store windows with things I could never afford. I walked past all of it like it belonged to another world. My world was simpler: work, home, my child, and the love that kept me going. And then one morning everything changed. I was walking fast, almost running, thinking about whether I could make it home earlier that day. And suddenly, "Excuse me." I stopped. A man stepped out of a small flower shop. He looked about 30. There was something incredibly warm, peaceful in his eyes. He held out a small bouquet, 3 delicate tulips. I was confused. "Is this for me?" He smiled. "Just because. To brighten your day." I couldn't remember the last time someone did something for me. "Just because. My name is William," he said. Then a little shyly added, "I see you rushing to work every morning, and I like you." Something warm spread through my chest. Like after a long winter, spring had suddenly arrived. "Maybe coffee after work?" he asked softly. I should have said no. I didn't have time for this. I had a different life now. But instead I heard myself say, "Okay." And all day I kept thinking about those 3 tulips. That evening we sat in a small cafe. The light was soft, the music quiet, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't rushing. We talked about simple things. Life, childhood, dreams that once felt so big. With him it felt easy, like we had known each other for a long time. But then my heart tightened. I knew I had to say it. "William," I began softly, looking down at my cup. "I have a son." I waited for that pause, the one where people usually pull away. "His name is Michael," I added, even quieter. "He's still very little." I looked up, and I didn't see fear or doubt. I saw something else entirely. "Michael," he repeated with a gentle smile. "That's a beautiful name." He leaned in slightly. "How old is he?" I was caught off guard. "You don't mind?" He shook his head softly. "Why would I? He's part of you." Then after a small pause, he said, "I'd like to meet him if you'd let me." And in that moment, something inside me melted. I didn't know what would happen next. I wasn't making plans. But for the first time in a long time, I felt warmth not only from the love for my son, but from hope. I remember that weekend with a special kind of tenderness. I was nervous, more nervous than the first day I went back to work after Michael was born, because this mattered more. This was a meeting. William arrived a little early. I saw him through the window, standing there with a small package in his hands, and honestly, he looked just as nervous as I felt. I opened the door. "Hi," I said softly. "Hi," he replied, smiling so warmly that some of my anxiety melted away. I gently called out, "Michael, sweetheart, come here." My little boy peeked out of the room, holding his favorite toy. He stopped, carefully looking at the stranger. My heart tightened, but William didn't rush. He crouched down to Michael's level and said gently, "Hi, Michael. I'm William." Then he held out the small package. Michael walked closer slowly, looked at me. I nodded. He took the gift, opened it, and his eyes lit up. It was a small toy car. "Thank you," he said quietly. And in that moment, something just fell into place. They sat on the floor and started playing together. I stood nearby watching them, and I couldn't stop smiling. Felt so simple, so natural, like he was always meant to be there with us. With each day, William grew closer, not just to me but to Michael too. He was attentive, patient, and real. And then we had our first real date. Not rushed, not between responsibilities, a real date. He took me to a small restaurant. Candles, warm lights, soft music. I felt a little overwhelmed because I hadn't felt like just a woman in a long time, not only a mother. He looked at me like I was the most important person in the world. "You're very strong," he said softly. "But with me, you don't have to be. You can just be happy." And I felt my heart open even more. 2 months passed. That evening felt normal, and yet different. William was a little quieter. We were walking in the park. Michael was running ahead, laughing, and suddenly William stopped. "Bridget!" His voice trembled slightly. I turned. He got down on one knee. The world stood still. "I can't promise a perfect life," he said, "but I promise I'll be there. For you. And for Michael. Always." There was a small ring in his hand. "Will you marry me?" I couldn't hold back my tears. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes." Michael ran up to us and hugged us both. And in that moment, we were already a family. 3 months later, we had our wedding. Small, warm, full of life. There were many of William's relatives. His 2 sisters, so different but equally kind. Their children ran around, laughing, playing. And that sound of children's laughter filled everything with light. My mom was crying. My dad held me tightly. I stood there in a simple white dress looking at William, and I thought, life is such a strange, beautiful thing. Once I stood on the edge with a broken heart in fear. Today, I stand next to a man who chose not only me, but my son. And when we said, "I do," I didn't just feel happiness. I felt home. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, just to make sure this is all real. Our home was no longer quiet. It was full of life. Michael's laughter echoed through every corner. His little footsteps, his voice, his mom look. It all became the music of my heart. And beside us was William. Warm, steady, ours. He didn't just enter our lives. He became part of it as if he had always been there. He read bedtime stories to Michael, built towers out of blocks with him, laughed with him, and sometimes I would catch myself watching them thinking, this is my family, a real one. We had dinners together, weekend walks, hugs for no reason at all. There was so much love in the simplest moments that sometimes it brought me to tears. I was no longer rushing through life. I was living it. And then one morning, I woke up with a strange feeling. A slight nausea, a softness in my body. At first, I didn't think much of it. But something inside me quietly whispered, check. My hands trembled slightly as I held the test. Those few minutes felt like forever. And when I looked, 2 lines. I froze. Tears rolled down my cheeks. But they were different this time. Quiet, bright. I placed my hand on my stomach and whispered, another miracle. That evening, we were sitting on the terrace. The air was warm, peaceful. Michael was already asleep. The world seemed to pause, leaving just the 2 of us. William was talking, smiling, and I looked at him, feeling my heart beat faster. I have something for you, I said softly. I handed him a small box. He looked at me, surprised, then opened it and froze. His eyes filled with light. Bridget, is this? I just nodded, unable to hold back my tears. He stood up, walked over to me, and held me so tightly, like he never wanted to let this happiness go. We're going to be parents again, he whispered. There was joy in his voice. Pure, real, deep. And in that moment, I understood. This was it. Not just love, not just a family. This was happiness we had fought for, lived through, built together. I rested my head on his shoulder, and we sat there in silence, looking at the night sky. And I thought, once I was afraid of the future, but now I'm waiting for it with an open heart. Because now I have everything. My family, my love, my life, and one more little miracle just beginning.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss new stories. And also write in the comments how you liked this story on a scale of 1 to 5. Watch the following video and enjoy watching.